Hi, I'm Sean Adams.
I'm Noreen Morioka.
And this is Designorama. So on this episode of Designorama, we're going to talk about mixing. Now, mixing is typically something we talk about with music. Sampling, pulling together different sounds, making a new kind of DJ track. And I know you're into that hip, young thing, so you get that, right?
Anyway, let's take it back further into the foundation of where mixing came from.
Okay.
I think the modernists here out in the West Coast were very interesting because they were influenced by Asian and South American cultures.
Right.
So what ends up happening is they take their own culture that they grew up with these other cultures and fuse them together. For example, Mr. Schindler,
Right.
who was influenced by Japanese cultures and his architecture. Rather than making buildings that were kept the inside in and the outside out, his buildings had that Japanese aesthetic of blurring the lines between the interior and the exterior.
Right. So, for example, I think Lou Danziger is a great example of the idea of mixing cultures or mixing ideas and styles. Lou, coined the idea of the fused metaphor, which is you take one symbol and another symbol and combine them, and it makes a third idea. So, for example, the American painting piece, which is a great piece that shows a paintbrush and an American flag. You weave the two together, and it very clearly says American painting without having to read the words.
Right, and then if you take maybe Tadanobu Yoko, for example, where the opposite direction.
Who's a Japanese graphic designer.
Japanese graphic designer, who at the time, I think a lot of Japanese people were reticent to use any type.
What, 50s, 60s?
Yeah. Imperialistic imagery, and so he started appropriating from Western cultures. So, for example, on one of his posters of Marilyn Monroe, he is using appropriated images of Marilyn Monroe, but then also uses the old Japanese silkscreening and ukiyo print effects to create a large image, flat image in the front, and a smaller image in the back to show perspective.
Right. I think there in contemporary work, which takes the idea a little further, and I think that has to do with the web. I actually think that because the web sort of democratizes information, and there's no priority any longer to what's the best, what's the worst, you can grab anything. Contemporary work sort of has that same idea. It sort of picks bits and pieces from multiple cultures and styles and slams them back together again, but there's no sense of hierarchy.
All right, I think I'm going to just skip over to Martin Vanetsky also.
Right.
Who I think is another individual.
Who's a graphic designer.
Graphic designer who does the same thing, where he is then looking at a wide variety of different types of images, putting them together to a very, very complex
Right. And it has a lot to do with collage and the idea of sort of letting the computer layer things on top of each other. But it is multiple cultures living side by side as opposed to intermixing.
Right.
One of the pieces that I love, that I think is a great example of this, something I saw recently that was done by Jeremy Mende, was an anime kid robot figurine that he had then applied Dresden porcelain images onto.
Right.
So it's
totally the opposite.
Totally the opposite. It's not porcelain. It's plastic. It's a different culture. It simply merges the two in a really unique, beautiful way.
Right, and a very opposite from unique and beautiful would probably be your new favorite drink, Jones Soda.
But Jones Soda, the
Oh
turkey
my
and
God.
gravy soda, I think is a great example of taking these different ideas and mixing them together to make new flavors, so that we're not locked into, it's going to be, one kind of soda and soda always tastes this way. You can make anything into soda.
Yeah.
So I think the mixing actually, it's sort of the way we work culturally in our daily lives in most of the cities we live in, that, and it's not a melting pot any longer. It's all salad bowls.
I like salad.
Do you?
Yeah.
You don't eat greens.
Sure.